Hello and welcome to Charlotte After Dark, where we are not discussing Kings of Hell MC, but we are in fact discussing a completely different story. So we're doing a bit of a switch up today, and we're going to be discussing the sixth book of a series that I have not yet talked about or touched on this channel. So this is going to be a bit of an adventure for all of us. This is The Fractured Mate by Susan Trombley, book, I think it's 6 of the Iriduan test subject series. That's right, I got that name right. Can't get out of here. So because I have the worst memory in the world, I wrote down all of the books. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are on the 6th book, The Fractured Mate by Susan Trombley. The other books are The Scorpion's Mate, The Krakens Mate, The Serpents Mate, The Warrior's Mate, The Hunter's Mate, and now The Fractured Mate. So you can see there's a bit of a theme going on here. Wonder what it could be. To fully understand the book I'm going to be talking about, and you know what? I don't think you actually have to fully understand the book I'm talking about, because I didn't understand the book I was reading. Oh my, I'd read every single book up until that point, except for The Hunter's Mate it was. I completely gave up about halfway through The Hunter's Mate, so I don't know. I was way more confused than I think I rightfully should have been when reading The Fractured Mate, so I'm just going to give you all a quick rundown of all these other books, and then we'll get into The Fractured Mate. The Scorpion's Mate is Claire and Thrax. So Claire was abducted from Earth. She became an Iriduan test subject. The Iriduans are kind of like a alien species of hot elf dragonfly people, and they sort of mate through like pheromones and everything. Like the females give off pheromones, and then the males are like just real suckered into it, you know what I mean? Like once they get a whiff of these specific pheromones, they just can't help themselves. They're like forever tied to this female, and in their culture that's not such a great thing because the females hold all the power. And so there's this one Iriduan dude called Halion, and he's a scientist, and he's looking for a cure, and that is the catalyst for all of this. So the the Scorpion's Mate, we follow Claire as she is put in like a situation with Thrax, who's like a half scorpion man thing. He was like a scorpion, like some sort of an alien scorpion. Then he came to the test lab, and then they did a bunch of mumbo jumbo to him, and then he became a semi-hot guy, which, you know, that happens. So I gotta say, I don't remember a ton about this book. I remember that they spend most of the book escaping from the labs, and they meet the Kraken, who becomes the main character in The Kraken's Mate. And okay, the one scene I remember from this book that sticks out, okay, there's 2 scenes that stick out in my mind, is in one scene, Claire's like, there's no food to eat, and Thrax is like, that's okay, suck my dick. And she's like, what? He's like, no, do it, there's food in there. And then she fucking does, and there is, and it's disgusting. Like, I was so grossed out. I can't even describe how grossed out I was. So that is like the main thing that sticks into my mind. And then at the very end of the book, when, you know, presumably everything works out okay. By the way, spoilers, major spoilers for everything here. So if you actually want to go read this spoiler free, read all the books, then I guess come back to this review, or don't, because you'll probably have forgotten by that point. At the very end, when Thrax and Claire get to safety, Claire starts this weird industrial cyber goth kind of trend on this like alien space station, and I'm like, I don't know about that, guys. It just seemed a little bit weird. Like, I don't know. The author was just like really into industrial cyber goth at the moment and was like, yeah, I need to work this into my book somehow, which becomes a theme in The Fractured Mate. So the next book in the series is, let me consult my notes here, The Krakens Mate. Joni and Nemon, by far the best book in the series. Ironically, once again, my memory is awful. I must just be smoking a ton of marijuana, but I can't remember too much about it except for tentacle sex. Lots of tentacle sex. Nemon is just the best. He's so adorable. Joni, I remember liking her. For some reason, not a lot of the female characters I remember a ton about. But anyways, definitely pick that book up. Even if you don't read The Scorpion's Mate, Nemon is just an absolute gem. And, you know, if you like tentacle sex or hentai or any shit like that, you'll probably like this book. The next book on the list is The Serpents Mate, Cass and Nahash. And all you need to know about this book is Nahash has 2 dicks. So read that book. It was quite a trip. The next is The Warrior's Mate, Teresa and Tyrell. Tyrell is like an Akrelian or something like that. It wasn't a very good book. There wasn't a whole lot of like escaping from a lab, which I guess is a feature of these books. I don't know, The Warrior's Mate, when you look online on like Goodreads and stuff, it has noticeably less reviews than the rest, so take from that what you will. The Hunter's Mate. This book, Taryn and Hunter. This is the book that I actually gave up on. Partway through, okay, in talking about The Hunter's Mate, I have to talk about another book by an author called R. Lee Smith called Cottonwood. And very similar premises, ant bugmen. Okay, and the women who have sex with them. So, in The Hunter's Mate, the hunter is a bug. He's an ant. He's like there's just nothing humanoid about him, and I was down for that. This was my most highly anticipated book in the series. I was like, this is gonna get crazy. Like, you thought scorpion, kraken, 2-dick serpent sex was weird. None of this is gonna get really weird ant sex. So what happens? Hunter gets a load of some pheromones, and somehow, through some science mumbo-jumbo, it turns him into a hot guy. And I closed the book, and I put the book away. That's my line. That's my line right there. And they crossed it, apparently. I didn't even know I had that line. There was some other stuff, too, where they were starting to get a bit weird, because they were adding this, like, sort of Egyptian, Assyrian, Sumerian kind of culture to it, and I'm like, this is supposed to be a sci-fi book. What's all this other crap doing in there? But that comes in later. What does that have to do with Cottonwood? Well, in Cottonwood, just a quick rundown of the plot of that. Some bug-like, kind of insectoid aliens crash land on Earth, and they end up, like, living in a ghetto, like a real garbage dump heap and everything. And they're not really allowed to do anything. They're not really allowed to interact with the rest of human society. They're sort of kept in their ghetto. And a character called Sarah Fowler, the main female character, she becomes a social worker for some of the bug creatures in this like particular section and everything like that. And the human government is like trying to develop weaponry and this and that. And you're probably sitting there like, does that sound familiar? And if it does, it's because it's the plot of District 9. And the author fully acknowledges that in her book, in the aftermath, or the afterword, or whatever you call it. She's like, I was writing this book before District 9 came out, and then it came out, and it wrecked all my hopes and dreams. But bless her, she published it anyways, and it turned out really fantastic, and they do the ant sex, and that's important to me. So you have these 2 different books, and they handle ant erotica very differently. One of them copped out, one of them went all the weird way, even if the way was real weird. Read Cottonwood, maybe read The Hunter's Mate if you're like into the series, I don't know. So now, we have discussed all we need to discuss. We know that there's a evil elf guy named Hallian who was like trying to find a cure for pheromones and stuff like that. So in The Fractured Mate, which is the book we're on now, we start off with Paisley. And that name just ain't working for me, and it continued to not work for me through the whole book, but whatever. You know, it's the author and she has her vision. So Paisley is probably one of the better female characters in this this whole thing. A lot of female characters in the sci-fi romance genre tend to be just like, there's this idea that it's like all these girls always have to be hyper competitive with other girls. And I don't know, just like they always got to be like real sassy and bitchy, and I'm just not into it. It's like, that's not how I act. That's not how most of the women in my life act. It's just like a really weird trend in sci-fi romance that they just tend to have fairly unlikable, like really nasty female characters. And I'm probably a bad feminist for saying that, but it's true. So we meet Paisley, and Paisley is by far the best of a bad lot. Possibly Joni with Nemon is also a really good one, because I remember particularly liking her and Cass. But anyways, Paisley got abducted from Earth many, many years ago, and she has been a slave ever since, working on kind of like a wrecker junker ship and everything like that, working for, well, not, I don't know what you call that. If you're a slave, are you like really working for someone? I guess you kind of are. Anyways, she is working for a guy named Greel, I believe his name is. And they're just, like, they're not really bounty hunters, they're just kind of like opportunists, I guess. So they get a bunch of Iriduans, which, if you'll remember from before, are the hot dragonfly elf guys. They tend to like have iridescent skin, really long flowing hair. They've got like little dragonfly wings, and like they're just always like the perfect hot guy, you know? So classic sci-fi romance. A couple of Iriduans come on board, and they have an Acrelian, and he's a bit of a bastard, and he like keeps trying to like, I don't know, like, he doesn't try to rape the main character, but he definitely talks about it a lot. Another one of those, you know, sci-fi romance trends. And honestly, romance in general is just a thing. So the Iriduans have Halion as a bit of a prisoner and everything like that. And Halion appears to have lost his memory. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't hardly know who he is or anything. So Greel is like, all right, well, we're going to try and be opportunistic about this. So Paisley, you go and start like trying to seduce him or do whatever, just kind of like see if we can somehow work him to our advantage. So Paisley is like on her own mission. She's like, I got to escape this. I've been a slave for years, and this guy might be my opportunity to get out, because he's also a prisoner, so our goals align. So she gets to talking with Halion, and it's kind of nice. They have a pretty good chemistry and everything like that. And Halion is slowly revealed to be bonkers. It turns out that he's got like a split personality, and he keeps like arguing with himself out loud. And Paisley decides, all right, well, I need to escape, and this guy's still my best shot. So regardless of if he's bonkers, I'm going to help him. I'm going to free him. And so she does. And a second personality ends up coming out during the escape. And this guy just slaughters everyone and everything, and Paisley ends up naming the personality Killer, because, you know, originality. Paisley and Killer as Halion escape the ship. They have a lot of setbacks and stuff like that, and honestly, I really like this whole sequence. The entire first part of this book is really good, in my opinion. Well, as good as I guess this genre gets, you know, it's not Game of Thrones or nothing, but bear with me. They escaped the ship, and they ended up going to a bit of a mining. It was like, I think it was like a former resort for like rich folks, but then it became, they discovered like minerals there, and so they started mining, and then the rich folks all left, and their resort is still there, so they end up like kind of squatting in this like resort town that's like, kind of like busted up and everything, and then they discover that there's like these gut rippers there, whereas like they're really just killer bunnies. Like, I'm not even joking, they're just killer bunnies. And they get warned, it's like, watch out for the gut rippers, they'll rip your guts. And they're all like, yeah, fine, whatever, fuck off, we gotta go in here and do this and that. And I can't quite remember, I think they're like trying to find a way off, basically. So they gotta like make money to either pay someone to get off the asteroids so that they can go to the rim or wherever. So in amongst all this, we find out that not only does Halion have one personality, two personalities, no, he's got three personalities. And over the course of their time at the busted down resort, just sort of like hunting killer rabbits and shit like that, and just sort of scavenging, Paisley starts to meet and sort of fall in love with every single one of the facets of his personality. The first one obviously being Halion, and Halion's really like sweet and gentle and nice, and Killer is obviously like, you know, the bad boy, you know, a Killer just is like a bad person the whole time, and like logically you shouldn't like him, but you kind of do, or at least I do. High Lord Enki is like something else. He's not exactly a split personality of Halion. He appears to know more. He's like manipulating events from inside Halion's mind. Enki doesn't want Halion to know he's in his mind and is manipulating events. So poor Halion's sitting there like, I lost all my memories and I don't know what's happening. And Killer's like, like this guy, he won't let us escape. He won't let us do anything. He's got plans, and I'm worried that like, as Halion continues to remember himself, I'm going to get destroyed. And then Enki's just sitting there like, so it's a whole lot of like getting to know him, I guess, getting to know all these personalities. And yeah, over the course of like, I want to say like half the book, eventually Paisley ends up having sex with all three of them. Because of course she does, you know, that's what we're here for. I guess the conceit of this book, because there's like sort of a thing that every book does that's sort of like, all right, this is kind of like the, I don't know what you would call it, like, it just almost like a theme. It's like, all right, this theme is tentacle sex. This theme is two dick sex. The theme in this one is like threesome, but without three men. It's like there's three men in one body and she gets to have sex with them all. I probably should mention that Enki has like psychic abilities of some kind, and at some point or another, he like psychically takes over one of the bunnies and like gives it to Paisley, and she names it Fluffy. So they got like a killer gut ripper bunny like alien, and it's named Fluffy. And this is getting real weird. The Iriduans end up kind of catching on, or specifically one of the Iriduans that was on the ship, he is mated to an unknown female character and everything like that. They end up getting picked up by this unknown female character, and it turns out that her name is Ninhursag or something like that. And it turns out her and Enki are man and wife, and yeah, like her, I guess, husband and wife, and they knew each other from long, long ago, and it turns out they're like ancient gods that once like ruled over, like, I guess they're the progenitors of like not only the human race but the Akrelians and the Iriduans, and like they can all sort of interbreed, but they belong to this one race that came before, and they're very godlike. And this is where the book starts to break totally down for me, because in the first book it was very much like, all right, we're escaping, we're surviving, we're getting to know each other. It just felt like a real space adventure. This one feels like Stargate. I don't know. It just feels a little odd. Enki ends up going off with Ninhursag and everything like that. And for some reason or another, they're going to Earth. And I should probably mention that in a previous book, Halion was apparently responsible for a takeover of Earth of some kind. Killed millions, has zero consequences. So they like really hammer it home where it's like, he's responsible for invading Earth. He did all these things. He's a terrible person. And none of it ends up coming back in any meaningful way. So you can just like forget about that. Turns out that there is a golden city of some kind hidden in the Earth's core. And there's some sort of a tablet that somehow only Enki can work or interpret or something. And it opens up this like a void rift thing where you can like alter events in time and space and stuff like that. And as for some reason, it starts tying into a sister series that belongs to this series, but I didn't freaking read very much of. Like, I think I read half a book. And so it's like, come on, Susan, what are you doing? I shouldn't have to read a whole other sister series to know what's going on in this one. Somewhere along the line, Enki starts having doubts, I guess you'd call it. Like, at this point, he's a prisoner of Ninhursag and some creature called the Progenitor. And I'm like, who's the Progenitor? Like, he's like a praying mantis guy. I guess I'm doing praying mantis hands here. And it just goes completely off the rails. And so Ninhursag's all like, you activate this tablet or we're gonna kill all the human race. And then they start setting up video feeds so he can see them just killing off the human race. And he's all chained. He's like, no, what is the cost of my rebellion? Bah! Like, if I activate this tablet, many more will die, so I have to stay strong. And somehow or another, Paisley, who's been off in space on a ship this whole time, she sort of ends up sort of getting together with this, well, not like getting together, but she finds, can't remember his name, I guess we'll call him Booty Call. She finds Booty Call, and he was one of the ones that was like imprisoning Halion at the beginning. Turns out he was mated to Ninhursag, who was using all these like mated Iriduan males to do her dark bidding. Now that she's out of there, basically it's like if the males are separated from the females for too long, they start going bonkers and then they eventually die. And so he's going through withdrawal. But then it turns out that Halion had actually discovered a cure. And so she's all like, Paisley's like, there's a cure out there, Booty Call. We'll find it. And she ends up like chaining him down. And he's like, no, kill me. I don't want to live this way. And she's like, have hope. So Somehow they end up getting found by like a lot of, I guess, male characters from other books. She ends up getting found by Nemon, Tyrell, and someone called the Associate and Roswell, who are from the sister series that I mentioned. And at this point, I was so confused. If I'm saying this and you're like, this sounds confusing, imagine how it was reading it. Paisley ends up getting kind of geared up and they're like, all right, we're going to go off to rescue Hallian / Enki. So they end up taking an elevator to the center of the earth. And eventually they end up getting to the center of the earth and there's fucking robots with freaking laser beams and they have to defeat them. And they start just being all like, you're the only one that can help Paisley. The power of love will compel Hallian to come forth. And if he's not Enki anymore, he can't activate the tablet and life as we know it will be saved. And I'm like, what the fuck? All these people, they're going off in all different directions. They're fighting the robot laser monsters. And Nemon's like, I'll create a distraction so you can get to the main temple, blah, 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 blah. And so he does, and he gets severely wounded, and Paisley goes there, and somehow or another something happens. The bad guys die. I don't even remember how they die, which is really bad. Yeah, definitely, like, the power of love brings Hallian to the surface. Something or other happens. Enki, like, they do this weird thing with Enki, where throughout the entire book, they're like, no, he's a separate being, and when it's convenient, no, I'm actually Hallian, and when it's not convenient, it's like, no, I'm like my own separate person. So somehow or another, Enki does this thing with the Void and gets Paisley to send future or past him a message like, come find me in the future. You know, if you ever seen Howl's Moving Castle, almost that scene. So Enki gets disappeared. But obviously it's a fake-out because that's the whole shtick of this, is that it's a threesome with one man. So you're like, all right, well, I guess Enki's dead. But I felt zero stakes. I was like, no, he's coming back, you know. And then Killer, who was my favorite this whole book, he does this thing with the tablet and apparently gets disintegrated in Hallian's mind. And then it's just Hallian in his own mind. And he's like, oh my goodness, I got my memories back. Yay. And then Paisley's also like, yay, but I'm also sad because the two other dudes of you that I loved are now gone. And I'm just like, what? What? So at a certain point, Hallian, because he's been the evil villain of this whole series, has to like make up with various peoples. And I guess like in the end, they decide, well, someone needs to go and make sure that no one can access this tablet again. So Paisley and Hallian decide, all right, well, we're just going to live in the abandoned city in the center of the earth by ourselves and be its guardians with Fluffy, the killer rabbit. And I'm like, what? This part bugged me most of all, okay? Throughout the book, Paisley is talking about her family on the farm. Oh my goodness, my family on the farm. I miss them so much. That like she was abducted. They thought she was abducted and didn't know what happened to their precious baby girl. And now she's on Earth and she has a chance to see them. And what does she do? No, I've made my choice. The man that I love is more important and also my mission. It's this thing that shows up in this genre and many other romance genres time and time again. This idea that you have to choose between your family and the man that you love. And it's like, why? So literally knowing that her family thinks she's dead, or at least abducted and God knows what happened to her, she's like, all right, well, I'm going to ask one of the other aliens to fake my death. And I'm like, go to the door and say hi. Tell them what an alien invasion already happened. Like they would clearly know that, like, oh, I guess she was part of this like alien invasion thing and something bad happened to her, but our baby girl's back, yay. Like she could even be like, oh, I met a man and he's in space and I can't stay, but for some reason they got this thing where it's like, no, if we like interact with people on the surface, somehow or another, they'll somehow find the golden city that no one's ever found in the history of humanity ever. No. On top of that, Hallian and Paisley end up having kids. And they keep the kids in the city, the abandoned city with no one else around. But then they have this bullshit where they're like, because it does this like time travel into the future bit where it's like following Paisley and Hallian's daughter, like a Myra or whatever her name is. And she talks about how she's literally met other people before and like gone to the surface. So I'm like, you couldn't have said hi to your family once. That really bugged me because it was so unnecessary. Me personally, I really like meet the family scenarios. It would have been fucking hilarious. You show up to the door, it's like, hey, small town conservative farm family, here's my new husband, and yeah, he's a hot alien elf dragonfly man. Woo! Like, that would have been great. I would have loved that, you know? There's just no reason to be that lazy about it. And moreover, we hear about the alien invasion that happened on Earth, but we see zero results from it. None at all. It just was like, yeah, these terrible things happened and a lot of people died. But then as far as the book is concerned, none of that really matters because you never actually even see another human aside from the female love interest that happened throughout these books. I guess kind of getting back to Killer and Enki, they survived. It wasn't even like a big thing. She was talking to Hallian and she was all like, oh my god, I'm really sad that Killer's not here. And then he's like, aren't I? And then she's like, oh my god, you survived. How? And he's all like, I guess I'm hard to kill. And there's no explanation, no nothing. And then also Enki too, he just kind of pops up. He's like, I'm back. And she's like, yeah, how'd that happen? And he's like, I got your message from the future or the past or something like that. And anyways, it ends with an epilogue with Paisley's daughter and Hallian and the hunter had some bad blood between them, and somehow their fucking kids ended up meeting up and like being all like, no, we love each other, and a very Romeo and Juliet thing. And like, I don't know, man. It was so good at the beginning, and then it just went so not good. In the Golden City and with like Enki and Herseg and everything like that, and there's another character called Alil in there somewhere. There was a very, at the end, the author in her notes basically said she was really into like Sumerian, Egyptian, Jordanian, all these different like ancient cultures and stuff like that. Isn't Jordan's still around, aren't they? Anyways, my memory's not perfect. So she clearly had an interest in that and wanted to work it into the plot, and it did not mesh. It didn't mesh even a little bit. And I feel like this is one of those instances where someone probably should have told the author, like, save it for another book. Like, really save it for another book. Because I felt like it really, all this stuff about, like, the Void and the Rift, I know it's part of a sister series, but unless it's part of the main series, have that shit be a cameo and nothing else. It should be one of those things where it's like, if people that read the Rift series book reads this, the Iriduan test subjects book, they're like, oh, I recognize that character, but it shouldn't in any way be required reading. And I felt like it was. I felt like I was very confused for most of the book. But the sex was pretty good. So 10 out of 10 in that regard. And I really liked Hallian. I really liked Killer. And Enki was okay. And Paisley was really good. Wasn't too much of a fan of the, true love saves the day bit. I like my female characters to have a little bit more to do than that. But that's just a personal opinion. So, Iriduan test subjects, give it a go. It's definitely more good than bad. As far as, like, the genre of sci-fi romance goes, it's probably honestly one of the better series because I've picked up and put down a lot of books in this series. So if sci-fi romance interests you in any case, give it a go. Definitely give the Krakens Mate a go at any rate, because that one, I almost had nothing bad to say about that book. It was like pretty good. That's all. Not much else to say except for, if you're gonna do ant sex, commit to ant sex. Don't fake me out, bitch. And I guess if you're gonna kill someone, fucking do it. I talked about that in On Your Knees Prospect with the Kings of Hell MC. Once again, it's like, Oh no, they're dead. Nope, they're not. They're alive. Oh no, this person is fully transformed into a hideous beast forever. Oh no, he's not. It's like, give me some stakes, man. Commit, motherfucker. I can't stand when authors do that because it's like, even when you don't know that it's gonna happen, you know it's gonna happen because of course it's gonna happen, and it just really, really stinks. I've taken a bit of a break from Kings of Hell MC, and I'm going to be reading, Pestilence, which is like the Four Horsemen romance saga, I guess. And so I'm excited for that. I guess stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe. Anyways, that's me. Have a good night, everyone.